Well, it says substance abuse treatment program.
Go ahead.
I can address that. The slots are also, well, you double that for an annual capacity because the programs, if you're looking at the substance abuse program, that is a 5-month program, so we run 2 cycles of people through that, so it's actually twice that at this point. And we do have future plans for expansion.
Okay, that just seems like, that seems very small to me, given that we're told that about 80% of the people in prison have issues related to substance abuse. So following on to that, my question would be, why wouldn't a priority be to scale up the certified substance abuse counselor vocational education programs so that we would have inmates who could try to bring to scale in every prison and be paid for doing so as a prison job, drug and alcohol abuse counseling?
We're actually in the process of finalizing a bid to go out for additional offender mentor certification programs at 3 additional locations. So we're looking at Avenal, Solano, and CCWF. Our current program is at CIW. So we are doing that this year, and I can inform the committee when that bid goes out. It is for the offender mentor certification program that would certify offenders to be alcohol and drug counselors both in prison and out.
Okay, that's great. Do you know what happened to the program at San Quentin, which was the starting program?
It was at Solano, and it switched off from year to year. It goes from a male institution to a female institution, so it's being run at a female institution right now.
Okay,
and then
but the problem with that is it's like a 2-year program at least, because you have to take the academic coursework and then you have to do the supervised clinical hours to get your...
It switches off after the course of the program over to the other institution to build our mentorship in both our female and males. And so that's why we're putting it out to bid to additional institutions now so that we can grow that population.
Okay. This is something I would like to follow up on.
Okay.
Because I think we need one of those programs in every one of our prisons. And then I did notice that the capacity went down, and the reason given was that the Central California Women's Facility, which Senator Mitchell and I are going to be visiting tomorrow, there were not enough target population inmates to fill 2 separate programs. Now, what does that mean? Because I can't believe, again, we have many thousand women there, that there aren't women that could use that program.
The target population is one that's defined by a 70% of our CASRA scores, the risk assessment scores, and a COMPASS score for a medium to high risk need. So those were the particular issue at that facility.
Okay. Just to flag another thing that I'd like you guys to look at, Ms. Tidwell and also Mr. Barton. Have we recalibrated eligibility? And I know that in the blueprint, it was very disturbing to me that it looked like our target population was really quite small. It was like 25% of people in their last 4 years in a reentry hub would receive some programming. And it would seem to me that we would really want to take our initial COMPASS assessment and in doing a plan. And I think we do make education available on a broader basis than that. And so how do we have a goal that accurately reflects even what we're doing now? Kind of how do we build on these things in a way that makes more sense? Okay. So that was.
Senator, I'm prepared to talk about the reentry hubs in the later agenda item later today when we have that discussion item.
Okay, thank you. Now, just to follow up again, did I understand that we don't pay for career technical education, but we do pay for the Prison Industry Association jobs?
What do you mean pay for? I mean, we do.
They make the inmates that work in the prison jobs make some money.
I guess I'm not understanding what you mean by job. So vocation is it's like a
Don't the
school
CalPIA
class.
Yeah, but the CalPIA
Yes, they don't get paid for holding classes.
work situations do
I
result in...
understand, right.
Yeah.
Those involve pay, but the vocational ones do not. They're getting the opportunity to learn a trade.
Okay. So have we considered, have we considered really whether you couldn't do just as good career technical education in-house as opposed to CalPIA if we also gave the incentive of inmates being able to earn money if they got a certificate?
And that's the tension. I mean, I think that's the constant tension.
That's what I've been told.
Yeah, you have
It's the tension with education programs too.
Right. The educators, the vocational educators say we can do it. PIA says we can do it. Both of them have had, successes in different areas. It's not that you lack inmates to put in vocational programs. There are waiting lists in most places, if they've got the right population. So finding the inmates to go into the programs, I think, is less of the problem. Finding the right inmate to put in the right program at the right time is the bigger challenge. I'm sure the department would like to be able to do everything that PIA does. PIA has probably, I would say, a better incentive because obviously they're working with outside contractors, et cetera, to produce the goods. And then in many ways inside the state, they produce things that the state uses as well. So, could we do that in-house? Yes, but you again would be looking at having to replicate programs that they have in place. The department may not have the resources, and as it is, they're challenged in many of these areas in finding staff to work, for example, in Blythe, in vocational positions and things of that nature. So I don't know if they would be any better at overcoming those that PIA is, but that obviously is a discussion that you would have to have with both entities.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry. I would like to add that we do have over 262 different career technical education programs throughout our system at all of our prisons, over 17 different types of education certificates or career technical education certificates that are gained. I'd be happy to provide the committee with a list of other numbers of how many certificates that we provide and the training that we do that is based on a national curriculum for education standards in those fields. So it's a little bit of apples to oranges when we're talking about PIA versus what we do.
I realize that.
Certification. Okay, just
and
want to make
that's why
that.
I just wondered if we'd had the full conversation about really how to structure, and I think perhaps it was the OIG that had the suggestion that you'd start in a career technical program and then move to a PIA program.
Well, if there
Or
were
what you
both in
might do.
existence, right. I mean, that's what I was thinking. And if you already have PIA there and they're doing something, why would you not make that available and make a plan to get there?
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. But then again, on page 44, where it says a post-realignment career technical education program, capacity, enrollment, and utilization, the capacity is about 7,600 slots.
Right.
Again, that's out of 134,000 people that we have in prison. So say 8,000 slots for 134,000 people means a lot of people that were really not at scale. And then it says the enrollment is 68% of capacity and utilization is 67%, which seems to mean that the slots aren't filled.
Well, that was a September report you're still looking at?
Well,
Or the most recent?
this is March 15th this year.
Okay.
But it was the December, but only last December, 2013.
So those are all snapshots.
Yeah, they're snapshots, but they indicate problems, don't
Oh,
they?
no, I agree. They're not fully, they're not fully staffed. They're not all fully used
Yeah.
at this point.
And
Yeah.
that's part of the ramp-up process through the blueprint that we've been working on implementation and full utilization over the last couple of years, and running into some of the issues that the Inspector General pointed out around the three-judge panel process and not being able to transfer people to the right program at the right time. since February, I think you're going to see some differences in our utilization upcoming since we've had that decision come down.
Oh, that's, yeah. That
Yes,
would
it's
certainly-
going to help
that's a-
tremendously,
yeah,
our ability to fill our current programs, and then to be able to look ahead at what our next steps of rehabilitation programs would be, because this is just getting to be fully implemented from the blueprint.
Okay, thank you. And then I wonder, there was some talk about the compass assessments and how they're used, and, you know, I'd like to ask the OAG, you raised some issues. What percentage of people are having a compass assessment that actually results in a usable program plan?
Well, the number is at 55%, I think, currently of the male population that has a compass done, and about 97% has had a risk assessment done, which is done earlier. And so, you know, their numbers of compass assessments are going up. In answer to your second question, it depends on how you define it. If you say that someone is compassed and what I would think of as a comprehensive plan to get them from the time they're in prison to their out date and what their rehabilitation program is going to be along the way, I would say it's zero at this point. Now, I know that we talked about the pilot project, and I know that the department didn't see enough efficacy in pursuing that, and believes that there is going to be a component within SOMS that's at least being discussed as filling that component, that case plan component. But again, you know, Ms. Tidwell may have more information for the committee on what the department's plan is.
And, well, I agree with you, what the Inspector General said as far as, but the reentry compasses were at about 97% complete as far as people who are coming out onto parole under CDCR's jurisdiction. So those numbers are quite high as far as being able to determine where someone's needs are in the community once they parole. And understanding that we have a fixed budget and a focused population of which we are, you know, attempting to address at this point in time.
Okay. Any other, what?
I actually would like to address the length of stay that the Inspector General brought up about the 1 day to meet our rehabilitation goals.
Yes.
I think that obviously he acknowledged that we are not placing inmates in a program for a day to move them to count them towards our rehabilitative goals. There's a variety of reasons why someone may be moved out of a program within a short period of time. Some of them are reflective of the person's own behavior. Other reasons include a reevaluation of testing scores or aptitude for certain academic or career technical education programs. We agree that the method of counting 1 day as successfully meeting the rehabilitative needs of an inmate is not acceptable, and we're currently reviewing our program data for counting rule appropriateness and for program outcome information. Just as an example, I can share with you some of our initial findings. For the combined academic and vocational programs, we looked at data between January 2010 and December 2013, and approximately 42% of the non-completers, because that's what we're talking about here, were in our programs for over 180 days. Another 20% account for the numbers of days being between 90 and 180, and then a combined 22% reflect the days, program days between 31 and 90 days. So we're digging into the data and looking at it, and only about 14% were in a program between 1 and 30 days for various reasons, as I mentioned before. We have directed a full-time staff person to resolving our counting issues, and happy to provide this committee updates as we redefine our computation for program success in order for us to ensure that we are meeting the goals of rehabilitation efforts as established by the legislature. So as we move forward, we're happy to include you in those conversations. A lot of the stuff that we're talking about comes up at our director stakeholder advisory groups of which you have membership on. And so happy to keep you informed as our process.
And that's wonderful to hear, because that's exactly what CROB and the IG's office has been recommending, that there be a percentage-based outcome evaluation of how long are people staying in when they're not completing, and certainly can give more meaning to what we mean by success at the end of the day when we come back and evaluate that target population. So, you know, I'm listening and for the first time hearing these numbers and writing them down myself, and so you know, I think that's very promising, and I commend Ms. Tidwell for making the effort to have that done, and I look forward to in the future having those types of statistics to be able to report.
I think that's very good. However, in the end, we also need a computation of how many people complete.
Oh,
right.
And if there are incentives for completion, milestone credits that can be used in a variety of ways, you know, and because that is what, as a policymaker, I understand, that's what I work on as a member of the Education Committee, how many people graduate from high
Right.
school, not did they stay from 1
Right.
to 90 days or 2,000 days, did they leave with something they can use on the outside?
And we have those numbers now.
yes. We have
Okay,
all those
and
numbers
and
now.
I know you're going to give that to me, and I thank
Yes.
you very much. But what I would like is for CROB to report it in one nice little chart so that we can look at it
I'll tell my staff.
twice a year and be able to tell.
I'll make a deal with you. If it's once a year, I guarantee you will have that chart.
Oh, if it's once a year, can we design the report so that we get everything we need?
You can give as much
Well, let's
input
think
as you
about
like.
that. Okay.
And
Okay.
I'm sorry, Senator, just wanted to address one other thing that I would be remiss if I didn't bring it up, about the incentive-based system to encourage our increased completion rates.
Yeah.
To that end, we've established an ad hoc committee through our division's stakeholder advisory group that's made up of the Association of Counties, Center for Employment Opportunities, some providers, Health Right 360, mental health systems, and San Bernardino, some research component piece of it, and have gotten a group together to discuss how we go about implementing a programs incentive contracting, performance-based contracting, incentives for people to participate. So all of that work is currently being done. They've had one meeting so far, another one has been scheduled. Looking forward to a report out at our next advisory committee, so we'll keep you informed on how that
Okay,
goes.
and this relates to the CROB recommendation that the department implement an incentive-based system.
Yes, ma'am.
To encourage substance abuse treatment completion.
Yes.
And all of those recommendations that we made, Senator, are hopefully going to be reported on in our next CROB report for this very reason, that the department is now working on several of them, and we hope to be able to report that.
I think that would be excellent.
Yep.
And maybe members of the committee could let you know some additional items. Like I know there were issues around training and other things that were in the report that we received in September.
Right.
So we, I think we need to look at all of that. Ms. Tidwell, could you then tell me when this committee could expect to receive recommendations that we could enact?
Oh, timeframes. I'm not sure about timeframes. I can check back with staff and see what they've committed to. We've only had the first meeting so far of this new group that's been formed, so I'll follow up and get you some timeframes associated with
I would totally
it.
appreciate that.
Okay.
And let me say, one of the frustrations often in dealing with any large institution is that the meetings stretch out over years, and by the time something is recommended, people forgot what the problem was. And I would rather see you take on fewer things and work in a really fast weekly meeting time frame, and let's see if we can put things in place that we can start implementing. And I just appreciate that you're bringing the energy to solving these problems that you are. And but it would be great if we could have something before we have to adopt the budget.
Okay, I'll let you know. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments from the
Thank you.
committee members?
Thank you.
Thank you both very, very much. And, okay. Now we are going to hear a little more from the LAO on their recommendations regarding prison population reduction, and also the Department of Finance and the department. Okay. Okay. So I'd like to welcome the LAO, and we've asked you to provide a little more meat on some of the recommendations that we briefly discussed last week, and would like to have you address those things in any order that you prefer. We asked 4 basic questions about cost estimates for the independent comprehensive evaluation of rehabilitation programs, and several of the others. So.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sarah Larson, Legislative Analyst's Office. So we're going to start with the Recidivism Reduction Fund proposals, and then we'll move on to the more specific population issues. So as you know, the state was recently granted an extension of the population cap, and the governor's budget estimates that $81.1 million will be deposited in the Recidivism Reduction Fund as a result of that extension. The governor's budget proposes that those funds are allocated through 5 specific proposals: expanding the use of community reentry facilities, expanding in-prison substance abuse treatment, expanding the integrated services for mentally ill parolees program, and expanding rehabilitation programming to in-state contract facilities, as well as a proposal to design the retrofit of the Northern California reentry facility. Because each of those proposals stand alone and we have specific recommendations for each, I'll walk through quickly our analyses of each specific proposal. However, I'd like to note that generally, while we find there's some merit in these proposals, we're concerned by the lack of detail included and also by the lack of program evaluation that is included, as well as by the fact that these proposals create ongoing costs despite the Recidivism Reduction Fund being a one-time expenditure. So the first proposal in this package is $40 million for 500 slots at community reentry facilities. We have 2 major concerns with this particular proposal. First, it doesn't include any details on how these facilities will be operated. For example, where they will be opened, how many there would be. And without those details, it's difficult for the legislature to determine whether this would be a cost-effective use of the funds. Second, we're concerned with the feasibility of the proposal. It may be difficult for the department to identify locations for these facilities, and we'd like to note that in 2007, the legislature actually approved funding to construct 32 reentry facilities, and in part because of the difficulty in finding suitable locations, that those facilities were never built. And so for those reasons, we recommend the legislature reject funding for this particular proposal. The next proposal that's in this package is $11.8 million in 2014-15 from the Recidivism Reduction Fund and $23.9 million in 15-16 from the General Fund to expand substance abuse treatment to all state prisons. And we believe that this proposal could cost-effectively reduce recidivism among the state's inmates. However, we are concerned that state prison substance abuse programs have not been subject to enough rigorous analytical evaluation that show definitively that the programs that CDCR in particular operates are cost-effective. Because we think that the proposal has merit, we recommend the legislature approve the proposed expansion. But given the limited data on the cost-effectiveness of the program, we also recommend that the legislature use a portion of the Recidivism Reduction Fund to contract with an independent researcher to evaluate the substance abuse treatment programs that CDCR provides. The third proposal in this package is $11.3 million to augment CDCR's ISMIP program, the Integrated Services for Mentally Ill Parolees program, which provides services to parolees suffering from serious mental illness who are at risk of homelessness. The proposed augmentation would increase total funding for ISMIP to $28 million in 14-15 and would expand the program from 600 to 900 slots. Based on the data provided by CDCR, it appears that the program is effective at reducing recidivism, but only for parolees who experience the most severe mental illness. Despite the program's lack of success with parolees that have less serious mental illnesses, the current proposal recommends expanding the program as it is currently operated. We also note that the program is very costly, approximately $26,500 per slot. By comparison, many of the other programs delivered by CDCR cost on the magnitude of several $1,000s per slot. Given the high cost of the program and the availability of other low-cost programs, we would recommend that the legislature maintain the program at its current size. We would also recommend that before the legislature approve the proposed expansion, it gather more information on the cost effectiveness of this program relative to CDCR's other programs. In particular, we recommend that the legislature use some portion of the recidivism reduction funding to evaluate the cost effectiveness of ISMIP, including how it affects recidivism, how realignment has affected the cost effectiveness of the program, and how Medi-Cal savings could be used to reduce the cost of the program. The final proposal that I'll discuss right now is the Rehabilitation Programming and In-State Contract Facilities proposal. And that's $9.7 million to provide cognitive behavioral therapy at the 11 contract facilities in the California City Correctional Center. It establishes approximately 4,000 programming slots, which would be equally distributed across each of the institutions. We have two major concerns with this proposal. First, it doesn't follow the reentry hub model, which we'll hear more about later, and that concentrates programming and focuses on high-risk inmates who are near release, which has been shown to be a cost-effective method of providing rehabilitation. This proposal, by contrast, would provide programming at all of the private contract facilities. Our other concern is that this provides the same number of programming slots for each facility, regardless of the population, and the facilities have very different populations. So, for example, Lassen has approximately 125 inmates, and California Correctional Center has approximately 2,400. Under this proposal, both of those facilities would receive the same number of slots. Given that distribution, there may be some inmates at the larger facilities who wouldn't receive treatment even if it was needed, while some inmates at the smaller facilities would not have as much treatment or would have more treatment than they would need. Though we have concerns with this specific proposal, we do think that inmates housed at the contract facilities have a need for rehabilitation programs, and we would recommend that the legislature withhold funding for this proposal and require the department to present a revised proposal that reflects the treatment needs of each facility and aligns with the reentry hub model, so focusing on high-risk inmates nearing release and, to the extent possible, concentrating services near where inmates will be released. The final proposal in the budget package of recidivism reduction proposals is $8.3 million to fund the design phase of NCRF, but since that'll be discussed later in this hearing, we can cover it at that point. We do have one last general recommendation, and that is that the type of rehabilitation services that CDCR provides have been found to reduce recidivism if they are implemented according to best practices. So, for example, providing cognitive behavioral therapy and substance abuse treatment. However, a significant portion of the inmate and parolee population will continue to lack access to these services, even if the administration's proposed expansions are approved. So the legislature may want to consider further expansion of these programs as a method of achieving long-term compliance with our population caps. However, it's unclear right now whether CDCR is operating these programs in the most cost-effective manner that's adherent to best practices. And given that lack of information, we would recommend that the legislature direct the department to develop a proposal to contract with an independent research entity to evaluate the cost-effectiveness of the inmate and parolee programs, as well as what impact an expansion of these programs might have. Such a study could help the legislature determine whether the current investment in rehabilitation is cost-effective, as well as whether an expansion of these programs could be a cost-effective method of reducing the population. So in addition to our recommendations about these specific proposals, we also have some other options for the legislature to consider to address long-term population. And so I'll turn this over to my colleague, Aaron Edwards, at this point to discuss those proposals.